you will know all of this, but I think it's important to just kind of think about where we're at individually, but really as a collective as well. So we've got, an aging workforce of veteran teachers who are, nearing retirement age. And at the same time, we have fewer and fewer people choosing to become teachers. And, therefore there's fewer new graduates replacing those retiring teachers. We also have a problem with early and mid-career teacher attrition. And that's, increasing. The stats kind of vary. It's hard to get good stats on that in Australia, but we certainly know that is true, particularly from anecdotal evidence, but there are some stats around that as well. And we do have a bit of a teacher shortage on the horizon. I know that in the end of 2019, I went to a education summit at the University of Southern Queensland, and the stat they gave there was that at the beginning of 2020, this is pre-pandemic, mind you, the beginning of 2020, Queensland was facing a shortage of about 500 to 800 teachers. I don't know what it is this year, but I'd be willing to bet it's at least that, if not more. Also, we know that from the teacher and principal health and wellbeing, the Principal Health and Wellbeing Survey, we know that principals are in crisis. And also there's been some research out of Bond University saying very similar things about teachers, that teachers are more likely than other professions to suffer from anxiety and depression and even alcohol abuse. And we know that the workload on teachers is really unreasonable, actually, and that curriculum pressures are increasing. And that was the case, all of this was the case before the pandemic kind of amplified everything. We also know job security can be a challenge, particularly in your early career before you can secure a permanent position. So it's not really the safe and secure profession that it used to be, that, people think of teaching as this really safe, secure profession. It's not necessarily the case anymore. We know student behaviour is very challenging, and we know that behaviour management is a common stressor. But we also know that there is an increasing problem with difficult and sometimes even abusive parents. That's no longer rare. I don't know that it's necessarily common across the board, but we definitely know it's a conversation that's increasing. And we know there is some bullying happening in our profession as well, including between, colleagues within a school and also from managers and leaders. And, we are living in interesting times. We had, started last year after the bushfire crisis, and then we've had all sorts of challenges with COVID-19 and the disruptions that brought to our education system. And depending where you are in Australia, if you're in Victoria, you will know this very, very intensely. So, the remit for education has never been more important. And the role of the teacher in a functioning society has never been more important. And the need for resilient teachers has never been greater. So, the power for you in being a person first and a teacher second is really coming to the forefront now. Now is the time to sit up and pay attention and to act, and, to not take this for granted anymore. I think that for many teachers, 2020 was a bit of a wake-up call. And you may have heard me say this before, but I think for a long time, a lot of teachers have been waiting for NAPLAN to change, waiting for funding models to improve and be fairer on the, the most disadvantaged students and the schools with the most need, waiting for the unreasonable and increasing workload to decrease, waiting for, that difficult colleague, that difficult manager, your principal to transfer to a different school, waiting for the politicians and the media to wake up and start to acknowledge, the reality of what's going on in schools, or even just waiting for that student or that parent with challenging behaviour to not be in your class anymore, waiting for the end of the year so that they will move on to a different class and you won't have to deal with them anymore. But of course, then the new year dawns and you might have a different student or parent that you're waiting to, not have to deal with anymore. And we don't always get that choice. So I think we've been waiting, but, this is the new normal. This is where we are, and we kind of need to accept and acknowledge the problem before we can respond to that. So I don't want to depress you, but I do want us to acknowledge where we are at. No more waiting for somebody else to fix things. I believe very strongly that we are the ones we've been waiting for, and that all of these challenges facing our profession and our society, they are what's called wicked problems. And yes, this is the new normal.